Elias Thorne never imagined his quiet backyard could be the gateway to another world. It started as a normal evening, the sun dipping low, birds chirping lazily, and the sound of his younger brother's video game drifting from inside. Elias was gazing at a peculiar shimmer in the air near the oak tree, something he'd never noticed before. Probably just heat waves, he muttered, taking a cautious step closer. But then, the shimmer pulsed, expanding like a bubble. Before he could react, a force yanked him forward. Colors swirled around him, golden, emerald, indigo, and a strange humming sound filled his ears. The world tilted, and he felt like he was falling through a kaleidoscope. When the spinning stopped, Elias found himself flat on his back, staring up at a canopy of trees. But these trees weren't ordinary, they glowed faintly, their bark shimmering with silver veins. The air smelled of something sweet and spicy, like cinnamon mixed with honey. "Where am I?" he whispered, sitting up. A rustling noise made him turn. From behind a bush emerged a creature that looked like a mix between a raccoon and a lizard, with scales that sparkled like gemstones. It tilted its head, sniffed the air, and darted off. "Okay, not Kansas anymore," Elias said, heart racing. As he wandered, more bizarre creatures appeared, a bird with 4 wings and a glowing tail, a rabbit with antlers, and a swarm of tiny, luminescent fish that floated through the air like fireflies. Despite their strangeness, they seemed harmless, and Elias felt a twinge of awe amidst his confusion. But awe quickly turned to alarm when the ground beneath his feet began to tremble. From the shadows of the forest emerged a creature unlike anything he'd seen before, a towering, 6-legged beast with a lion's mane and the eyes of a serpent. It let out a guttural roar that shook the trees. "Okay, nope," Elias yelled, turning to run. The chase was chaotic, with Elias darting between trees and leaping over glowing roots. Just when he thought he was done for, a burst of flame shot past him, striking the beast. It roared in pain and retreated into the shadows. Elias turned to see his savior, a sleek, fox-like creature with fur that shimmered like embers and eyes that glowed orange. "Do you always scream like that, or was this a special occasion?" the fox said, its voice smooth and surprisingly human. "You can talk." Elias stammered, still catching his breath. "Clearly," the fox replied, sitting and licking its paw nonchalantly. "The real question is, what are you doing here, human? You don't belong." Elias had no answer. He could only stare as the fox's fur glowed brighter, its tail flicking lazily. This was going to be a long, strange adventure. Chapter 2, The Talking Fox. Elias stood frozen, staring at the glowing fox. He'd read books and seen movies about magical worlds, but he'd never imagined being part of one. "Well? Cat got your tongue," the fox said, its fiery tail flicking. "Fox, actually," Elias managed to blurt out. "And I don't know how I got here. One minute I was in my backyard, and now," he gestured at the glowing trees and surreal animals around them. "Ah, a portal accident," the fox mused, circling him. "Classic. Humans are always stumbling into the Betweenlands. You're lucky you didn't end up in a lava pit or inside a gulper worm." "A gulper what?" Elias asked nervously. "Never mind that," the fox said, sitting on its haunches. "Name's Ember. I'm a pyrofox, and lucky for you, I'm feeling charitable today." Elias narrowed his eyes. "Charitable how?" "I saved your skin from that dusk prowler, didn't I?" Ember said, tilting its head. "Now I'll help you get out of here before something nastier finds you. Of course, there's the matter of payment." "Payment?" Elias sputtered. "I don't even know where I am. What could I possibly give you?" Ember grinned, showing sharp teeth. "Relax, kid. I'm joking. Mostly. But if you're sticking with me, you better keep up. The Betweenlands aren't for the faint of heart. Before Elias could protest, Ember trotted off into the forest. The boy hesitated, then hurried after the pyrofox. The journey through the Betweenlands was a sensory overload. Every step revealed something new: flowers that sang when touched, trees that rearranged their branches to form pathways, and streams of water that flowed uphill. Elias couldn't decide whether to be amazed or terrified. "So, where exactly are we going?" Elias asked, dodging a low-hanging vine that glowed like a neon rope. "To the Skywhale spire," Ember said without turning. "The sages there might know how to send you back to your world." "That's great," Elias said, relief washing over him. "How far is it?" "Far," Ember replied. "Of course it is," Elias muttered. They hadn't gone far when trouble found them. A chorus of high-pitched giggles echoed through the trees. Ember? What's that?" Elias asked, his skin crawling. The fox's ears twitched. "Jelly goblins," Ember said with a groan. "Annoying little blobs." Before Elias could ask more, the giggling grew louder, and a dozen small, jiggly creatures emerged from the shadows. They resembled blobs of gelatin with stubby arms and legs, their translucent bodies shimmering in the forest's light. "Shiny! Shiny!" one of the goblins squealed, pointing at Elias's wristwatch. "Hey, that's mine," Elias said, clutching his arm. "Give Shiny," another goblin demanded, bouncing toward him. Elias backed up. Ember? A little help?" Ember sighed dramatically. "Why do humans always attract the weirdos?" The pyrofox leaped forward, breathing a small burst of fire. The goblins squealed and scattered, their gooey bodies wobbling. But instead of running away, they regrouped, forming a larger blob that towered over Elias. "Oh, that's new," Ember said, tail flicking. "What do we do?" Elias asked, panic rising. "Don't just stand there. Fight!" Ember snapped. "With what?" Elias shouted, frantically looking around. "Use your instincts, kid," Ember called, dodging a slimy appendage as the blob lashed out. Instincts? Elias didn't even know how to survive gym class, let alone fight magical creatures. But as the blob loomed closer, something deep inside him stirred. His hands grew warm, and a faint glow surrounded them. Without thinking, he thrust his palms forward, and a burst of golden light shot out, striking the goblin blob. The blob quivered and exploded into a shower of harmless jelly. The individual goblins scattered, squealing in terror as they fled. Elias stared at his hands in disbelief. "What was that?" Ember smirked. "Looks like you've got a spark of magic in you, kid. Maybe you're not completely useless after all." "Magic?" Elias said, still staring at his glowing palms. "But I've never—" "Save the self-discovery for later," Ember interrupted. "We need to move before something bigger smells that mess." Reluctantly, Elias followed Ember deeper into the forest, his mind racing. If he had magic, what else was he capable of? And what would it take to get back home? Chapter 3: The Jelly Goblins. As Elias and Ember traveled further into the glowing forest, the boy's thoughts swirled with questions about his newfound powers. What had caused the light? Could he control it? "Quit overthinking," Ember said, glancing back at him. "Magic's like a muscle. Use it, and it gets stronger. Ignore it, and you'll end up squashed by something nastier than jelly goblins." "Comforting," Elias muttered. Their conversation was cut short when the forest opened into a clearing. In the center was a shimmering pool of water, its surface rippling with colors like oil on pavement. "This is a waypoint," Ember said. "Drink from it, and you'll feel stronger. The Betweenlands aren't kind to outsiders like you." Elias knelt by the pool, hesitant. The water glowed faintly, and tiny fish darted beneath the surface, their bodies transparent except for their glowing blue hearts. "Is it safe?" he asked. "Mostly," Ember said with a sly grin. Before Elias could reconsider, the fox shoved him forward, and his hands plunged into the water. It felt warm and oddly soothing. As he pulled his hands out, the warmth spread through his body, leaving him refreshed and energized. "See? You didn't die," Ember said, trotting off. Elias shook his head and followed. Chapter 4: The Skywhales' Oasis. After hours of walking, the trees thinned, and the ground began to slope upward. They reached a plateau overlooking a breathtaking sight, a massive floating island, tethered to the ground by glowing, root-like tendrils. Above the island, enormous creatures drifted through the sky, whales, but unlike any Elias had seen before. Their bodies shimmered with pearlescent scales, and their long, feathery fins glowed softly as they moved through the air. "Sky whales," Ember said, his tone unusually reverent. "They're the keepers of balance here. If anyone knows how to send you home, it's them." "How do we get up there?" Elias asked, staring at the floating island in awe. "Simple. We climb," Ember said, leaping onto one of the glowing tendrils. "You've got to be kidding me," Elias groaned. The climb was grueling, but they eventually reached the island's surface. It was lush and vibrant, with fields of glowing grass and ponds of sparkling water. The sky whales glided lazily above, their haunting songs echoing across the landscape. A smaller sky whale descended, its massive eye studying Elias. "Human," it said, its voice deep and melodic, "you do not belong here." "I know," Elias said, bowing his head. "But I need help to get home." The sky whale tilted its head. "The heart of the world may guide you, but its path is perilous. Are you prepared to face the trials?" Elias hesitated. He barely understood this world, let alone how to survive it. But what choice did he have? "I'll do whatever it takes," he said firmly. The sky whale hummed, then released a beam of light from its fin. A map formed in the air, showing a glowing red mark in a distant mountain range. "Follow this path," the sky whale said. "But beware the shadows. They are drawn to the heart's power." Chapter 5: The Shadow Beasts. Elias and Ember traveled for days, following the map's guidance. The landscape grew darker as they approached the mountains, the vibrant colors of the Betweenlands fading into dull grays. "This place gives me the creeps," Elias said, gripping a sturdy branch he'd fashioned into a makeshift staff. "Stay sharp," Ember warned. "Shadow beasts are more than a match for a beginner like you." Before Elias could ask what a shadow beast was, he got his answer. From the gloom emerged creatures with twisted forms, their bodies shifting like smoke. Their glowing red eyes locked onto Elias, and they charged. Elias's heart raced as he raised his staff, summoning the golden light again. This time, it came more easily, forming a shield that deflected the beast's attacks. Ember darted around him, breathing bursts of fire to drive them back. But the beasts kept coming. One lunged at Elias, knocking him to the ground. As it pinned him, its smoky form began to seep into his skin, filling his mind with fear and doubt. "Fight it!" Ember shouted. Gritting his teeth, Elias focused on the warmth of his magic. The golden light flared, driving the shadow away. With a final burst of energy, he unleashed a wave of light, scattering the remaining beasts. Panting, Elias looked at Ember. "I think I hate this place." Chapter 6: The Heart of the World. At last, they reached the mountain's peak. In a crystal cavern at the summit, Elias found the heart of the world, a glowing orb suspended in the air, pulsing with energy. "It's beautiful," Elias whispered, stepping closer. As he reached out, the heart spoke in a voice that echoed in his mind. "You have a choice, Elias Thorne. You may return to your world, or stay and protect this one." Elias froze. "Protect it?" From what? The shadow grows, the heart said. This world needs a guardian. Elias's mind raced. He thought of his family, his friends, the life he'd left behind. But he also thought of the Betweenlands, its beauty, its dangers, and the strange sense of belonging he felt here. What happens if I leave? He asked. The balance will falter, the heart said. But another may rise in your place. Elias looked at Ember, who watched silently, his fiery tail flicking. You're annoying, Elias said with a small smile. But I'd miss you. The fox smirked. Who wouldn't? Chapter 7, Final Choice. Elias took a deep breath. I'll stay. The heart pulsed, and golden light enveloped him. The power of the Betweenlands flowed into Elias, and he felt a deep connection to the land and its creatures. When the light faded, Ember grinned. Welcome to the team, Guardian. Elias smiled. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, he felt ready to face it.